Really good to see all of you. It's been quite a while. I've had a lot going on for quite a long time. Um, my name is HonGō. I'm a senior student at the Village Zendo. And anyway, recently my wife and I, we moved up to Northampton and Massachusetts. It's been a long time coming, and last Sunday I started sitting with the HonGō's Sangha for the first time. It was, I hadn't realized how much I really miss sitting with other people and sitting with all of you. It's been so long since COVID. I used to come in quite regularly. Um, at the end of the sit, we had a service, and it was wonderful just chatting with people in person. I really love that. I also have missed the scent of the incense, the quiet dance that goes on with the people moving in and out of the space. And I especially miss zazen kais and preparing and offering meals for oryoki with seizon. That's been such a long time ago. The signs of spring are here now, and I'm seeing buds open on the trees, and some of the trees are actually looking like they're starting to turn green. And the daffodils and hyacinths and tulips are pushing up, and some of them are blooming. The maple trees are very happy right now because it's been freezing at night and warm during the day, and so it might be a good year for maple syrup. I love the spring and the smell of the earth. Everything begins again in the spring, and now that we've moved to Northampton, we have immediately become involved with our local gardening community. We signed up for a plot, and we got a 20 by 20 plot, and that should be sufficient to supply us with all our vegetables for the whole entire year. For a long time, my wife and I had wanted to move to a quieter setting. So over a year and a half, we've been searching for a good place to go, and we had planned to go back to Colorado. We'd lived there for a few years and had a house there, but never really felt at home. I didn't want to, also, it was very important to me to not lose contact with the Zendo, so instead we started looking in Northampton because I knew there was a sister Sangha there. And with the help of the Oxbow community, and in particular Meikame and Kyokushin, we decided to move up here. We've moved several times in the past, from California to New York, from New York to Colorado, back again to New York. Back and forth and back and forth. These moves were for sure stress-inducing, but this time it was much more complicated, and as I see it, unnecessarily so, from what my experience is from the past. But I tried to tackle each complication as it came up. That's all you can really do. While buying our condo, the situation kept changing, and in particular, the closing dates that the seller wanted, which didn't make much difference to me, but it did to the loan. The lender also kept asking for documents, and just as I thought I had given them everything they could possibly want, they'd ask for more, and I'd have to go on a search for more documents to satisfy them. I often felt completely overwhelmed, and in the end, everything came together, as things usually do. They come together one way or another. And we are now nicely moved in, even though there are still loose ends to take care of. My saga isn't unusual, and for a while, I've been hearing from many people how complicated things are now. And it seems to be a great concern to a lot of people. I know the feeling of being overwhelmed. And when I say overwhelmed, I mean things being beyond my capacity to take care of, or to the point where I just want to throw up my hands and say, to heck with it. I came across this quote that says, "It is easy to feel overwhelmed when you're so focused on the future that you forget about today." For me, it's not so much forgetting about the future or the present, but planning about planning and trying to get things together about what's coming up on the horizon can be obsessive. I can get obsessed over it. It's not the planning. That's not that planning's bad, but going over and over in one's mind can lead to sleepless nights, which I have had several of. I don't remember things being like this as much as in the past, but it probably was, possibly even more. For a while now, I've been co-hosting Sorting Out Our Stuff with Keiko on Tuesday mornings. A group of us come together to take care of things we have often procrastinated about or just plain avoided, and to support each other for those 2 hours we're together. Surprisingly, I feel that support throughout the week, and it's really quite a comfort. It's not something that I had expected. We all tackle things that we've been avoiding, and these range from anywhere from shredding documents to phone calls to doing exercise, or just to allow ourselves some me time. Me time is very hard to come by very often. It's surprising that what we have been avoiding or postponing at times turn out to be nothing that we thought it would be. For example, one of the people was avoiding opening a letter from the IRS, and it turned out to be junk mail that was made to look to resemble an official letter. We get so caught up in what might happen in the future with no real idea of what's going to take place. And at the end of our day of sorting, things that have been so daunting are often resolved, at least to some extent, sometimes completely. The moving, the sorting, the stress reminds me of case 22 in the Blue Cliff records, Hsueh Feng's turtle-nosed snake. This koan is very personal to me, and I have spent actually some sleepless nights looking at it, and it plays into so much of my life, and I would think probably everyone else's. Hsueh Feng taught the assembly. On South Mountain, there's a turtle-nosed snake. All of you people must take a good look. Cheng said, in the hall today, there are certainly people who are losing their bodies and losing their lives. A monk related this to Xuan Sha. Xuan Sha said, it takes elder brother Leng to be like this. Nevertheless, I am not. The monk asked, what about you, teacher? Xuan Sha said, why make use of South Mountain? Human took his staff and threw it down in front of Hsueh Feng, making a gesture of fright. I think this is a very interesting koan. And the more I delve into it, the more layers there are to it. Where is South Mountain? And what is the turtle-nosed snake? What will we find? A condo purchase? A koan officer? Oh, I mean, a loan officer. Or an unopened piece of mail. The turtle-nosed snake in China was considered to be the most venomous snake of all. We must take a good look at the snake, as Hsueh Feng says. This isn't something we have to do just at one time, but it is necessary to do over and over because we are constantly facing the snake. It's something we must do constantly. It's just a piece of the part of the practice. Feng doesn't say need to look, but that we must look. We each have a snake to face, and there are many ways to deal with it. Snakes need to be handled with care because they are wily and dangerous, so we try to avoid them. If we don't look carefully, though, we can mistake a staff for a snake. But I think it's deeper than any particular instance or situation. Some situations are reoccurring and very similar, some are different. But it's what's deep inside us that triggers the emotion we feel so strongly. For each of us, I'm sure it's different. And more often than not, what I have to face is nothing compared to what I come up with in my mind. I have a very fertile mind for such things. When I'm able to sit down and face the snake, I'm able to find peace that doesn't come from avoidance or freezing like a rabbit in the headlights. For me, one of the snakes is my feeling of inadequacy, of failing, not being up to the task at hand. The trek up the mountain, it can be very arduous. My perspective on the situation, is it real or isn't it? Many things that we encounter can appear to be dangerous snakes and turn out to be nothing more than possibly a piece of junk mail. Snakes can be handled again in many ways, and one of my favorites is avoidance. If I'm lucky, maybe that snake will just go away. This doesn't work well at all, and actually, I've never really seen it happen. The situation persists and the snake is still there, whether I like it or not. I think that one must become a snake handler, facing it eye to eye and inspecting it closely for what it is. It comes in many different guises, but it's still the same perception of ourselves. My snake never really goes away. I get better at handling it, but the snake keeps coming back in different forms and must be challenged again and again. Who is the snake? It's me. I am the snake. As Chanting says, in the hall today, there are certainly people who are losing their bodies and their lives. Each time we face the snake, we have to do this. When I was in my 20s, this is an example of it's easy when things are just come at you and you don't have any choice but to drop everything. And I had an instance where I was having almost in a headlong collision driving down a road in the country. And it was amazing because I didn't feel any fear or anything. Everything just happened. And the next thing I know, I was driving along behind the person and I felt no fear, but it does come up and I remember it because it was so clear about how easy it was and how painless it was. On the other hand, when I'm facing the snake, when things come up and I have time to ruminate about them, then it's difficult, but I still have to get to that point. I have to drop everything. As I said earlier, making the move to Massachusetts was complicated and things kept changing over and over again. The seller changed the closing date at least 3 times. So I was back and forth with the people giving us the loan, trying to make sure that everything would come together in time for the closing. I often felt completely overwhelmed and that I just couldn't keep up with all that was going on. There would come a point when I just had to drop the idea of what I was capable of and do just do what needed to be done. In situations like that, the snake simply vanishes at that point. I would like to think that at some time in the future this would cease, but I know that's not going to be the case. But with our practice, it gets a bit easier each time. When I get caught up in what I have to face, I lose sight of the difficulties that others are having, and I think no one else is suffering. It's only me and my suffering that exists. Examining our snakes and learning to see them and realize that we all have them, we can better understand and be aware of what others are going through. The more we practice, the more we become aware. While doing zazen, we have the opportunity to sit without judgment and watch as the thoughts surface and disappear over and over again. The snake, I sit with the snake, he comes up, and then he disappears back into his hole or evaporates like a cloud. As Dogen says, zazen is the Dharma gate of great ease and joy. Doing zazen is a chance to just sit and be aware and just sit. What a relief. For me, this simplifies my life so. Facing our snakes can be painful and unrelenting at times, and being aware of this, I feel great compassion for others because I know everyone goes through this. It can drive one to do things that are harmful to themselves and to others. And when I see this, I wonder what is it that has driven to them to this point that they fail to recognize that they're not the only ones suffering? What misguided thoughts can cause this pain and fear? On inspection, what I fear and want to avoid most is in the future, and that is unknowable. What will the outcome of the condo purchase be? How will I deal with a mess in the house and make order of it? The other day, while doing zazen with the Oxbow Sangha, I was so tempted to know what time it was, where it was. I wasn't comfortable with not knowing at what point we were sitting. Facing what is unknown looms like a huge venomous snake ready to strike and kill. I guess this is why people go to card readers and seances and such as that, to ease the pain and fear of not knowing, thinking there's a way to know that's going to help in the future. How will we make use of this suffering that we go through? I don't know. I think that's something that we do on a moment-to-moment basis, and if we're aware of it, we can deal with it in a good way. I'm going to end with a quote from Norman Fisher that goes, "When we stop creating unnecessary suffering, we can notice all the suffering around us." And I think that's very important. So anyway, thank you and have a good evening.